Chapter 857. I know, Shun Miao softly said. Shun Xian looked at Shun Miao, and, after looking for a while, he then smiled. After a few more years. After a few more years, Father promises you that one will definitely come and look for you. Shun Miao gently smiled. I will wait for Father. Ever since that day when Shun Xian and Shun Miao had a long private talk in the study, Shun Xian and Shun Miao's relationship seemed to be closer, as Shun Miao often watched Shun Xian practice martial arts in the courtyard. This made Shun Xiu very jealous, as he said, "Recently younger sister is sticking to Father and does not even care about me." Shun Miao, however, felt that there was a tacit secret between her and Shun Xian. Shun Xian had become the person who understood her the most in the Shun family, thus there were no scruples when speaking. Most of the time, she was advising Shun Xian on how to guard against the heavenly family. She had stayed in the palace for so long in her previous life and had some understanding of the imperial family of Ming-Chi. When it was said to Shun Xian was very surprised as he did not know where did Shun Miao got to know all these. Naturally, Shun Miao did not hesitate to push all the credit to Xie Jingxing, which made Shun Xian to be more vigilant of Xie Jingxing. With such scheming skills, one must not underestimate him, and one must be more vigilant, lest one be sold off by others. Speaking of Xie Jingxing, Shun Miao also asked if Xie Jingxing had said anything to Shun Xian. Xie Jingxing did not admit nor deny it. Seeing his attitude, Shun Miao had an idea in her heart. Speaking of what would happen to the Shun family in Ming-Chi, Xie Jingxing said that with his support in Ming-Chi's Ding capital, nothing would happen to the Shun family. With these words of his, Shun Miao was relieved. In a blink of an eye, it was the night before the wedding. On the second day, Shun Miao would be getting married from the Shun family and bring the bridal sedan to stroll around the entire Ding capital. After the bustling ceremony, she would leave the Ding capital city gates and majestically leave Ming-Chi and head towards the Great Liang. The things that should be brought were brought, and the people that should be brought were also brought. Even Shun Miao did not forget about Pei Lang. With Pei Lang's identity, it was very dangerous for him to stay in the Ding capital, and Fu Xiu, he would definitely dig 3 feet into the ground to find him. Thus it was better to let Pei Lang mix into the wedding procession and head to the Great Liang together. Previously, Shun Miao thought that even if it was because of Lu Ying, Pei Lang would not easily agree to go to the Great Liang and would have to persuade him. But she only mentioned it in the letter, and Pei Lang very readily replied to her saying that he agreed to go to the Great Liang. This made Shun Miao somewhat puzzled as she thought if it was Xie Jingxing who threatened Pei Lang, but she felt that Xie Jingxing would not do such a thing. If Pei Lang stayed in Ming-Chi or the Great Liang, Xie Jingxing would not care whether he was alive or dead. Shun Miao was getting married tomorrow, and other than the sleepless night in the Shun residence, naturally, there were others who did not have the heart to sleep. The Princess Mansion was one of them. Princess Romance Rendezvous paced back and forth in the room. She had dismissed all the servants as she was afraid that her abnormal actions would arouse suspicions. Ever since she discovered that Prince Rui was Xie Jingxing, even though Princess Romance Rendezvous had a lot of doubts, she never took the initiative to go to the residence of Prince Rui to ask Xie Jingxing. She knew that there were many eyes and ears in the Ding capital, and even though she was a princess who did not care about worldly affairs, it did not mean that there was no one who did not pay attention to her every move. If there were people who discovered something and followed the vines to the melon to find out Xie Jingxing's identity, what would happen at that time? Princess Romance Rendezvous would always remember some old feelings towards Xie Jingxing. She was wary of him, suspicious of him, and vigilant of him, but could not forget the past years of companionship. She could not forget that in those lonely days, it was Xie Jingxing who came to talk to her, allowing her to pass through the difficult times of being a widow. One's feelings were very complicated, and there was no pure love or hate. If one could clearly distinguish love and hate, most likely many things in the world would become much easier. The most difficult thing was that love was mixed in. Thus one could not harden one's heart and act as if nothing had happened. Chapter 858. Tomorrow Shen Miao would be getting married, and tomorrow Xie Jingxing would be leaving Ming Qi's Ding capital. When Xie Jingxing returned to Great Liang and once again step into Ming Qi, when would it be? Would he meet with her on the battlefield at that time? Or would he bring people to flatten Ming Qi's Ding capital? Princess Rong Xin was Xie Jingxing's previous Imu and was also the princess of Ming Qi. In front of the country and family affection, one had to make a choice. Not to mention that there was an element of deception in this family affection. After a moment, she walked to the table and sat down before taking out a pen and paper. She dipped the pen in ink and was about to write on the paper, but stopped her actions just as she was about to write, as if she was in a dilemma. When this letter was written and sent out, no one knew what was waiting for Xie Jingxing. Perhaps it would be thousands of people criticizing him, or perhaps he would be in danger. But there was one thing that was certain. When this letter was completed, it represented that she had made a choice. The feelings that she had with Xie Jingxing in the past would vanish at this moment. It was a painful matter for Princess Rong and Xie Jingxing to turn from a close relative to a person with hatred. Princess Rong dared not think of this ending, but she had no choice. She really did not expect that she, who almost followed Xie Jingxing's death news, would now personally push Xie Jingxing onto the road of death. She clenched her teeth and finally picked up the pen to write. In the residence of the Count of Pingnan, Su Yu and Su Foran looked at Su Mingfeng's tightly shut study door and looked at each other in dismay. Su Mingfeng had lived for more than 20 years, and this was the first time he longed for a young lady in his heart. Unfortunately, this marriage was not fated. Previously, with the crown prince's coercion, it was not easy for the Su family to take the risk and not hesitate to go against the crown prince to let Su Mingfeng marry Shen Miao first, who knew that after the crown prince's matter was over, Prince Rui appeared out of nowhere. Shen Xian was a person who doted on his daughter, but at the end he had no choice but to comply with the imperial edict to let his own daughter marry far away to the Great Liang, not to mention that their status was not as high as the Count of Pingnan in the general residence. Su Foran sighed. The current plan is to wait for a long time for Mingfeng to understand and forget about the young lady of the Shen family. It is easier said than done. Su Yu shook his head. Mingfeng's temperament is like me and is sentimental. To change one's affections and forget about the Shen family's young lady, I'm afraid it's not that simple. He looked at Su Foran. It is useless for us to stand here. It is better to return first and let Mingfeng think about it. Madame Su glared at Su Yu. Love is not a piece of flesh that fell from your body. Don't you know how to feel for it? This is my son. Seeing him sad is more painful than cutting my flesh. Then why didn't you go in and persuade him? He wouldn't listen even if you did. Isn't it the same? Su Yu felt wronged. But one saw Su Minglang carrying a thick stack of calligraphy as he passed by. As Su Minglang grew older, he finally put away his childhood liveliness and gradually became the second Su Mingfeng. But as compared to the gentle and polite Su Mingfeng, Su Minglang was more arrogant. Now, when facing his own parents, he had to put on the airs of a little adult. Su Yu had secretly complained a few times that Su Minglang was not cute anymore. Su Yu called out, Minglang. Su Minglang stopped his footsteps and walked towards both of them and called out father and mother. Your eldest brother suffered a blow today and is not in a good mood. Father has an important task for you. Go to your eldest brother's study and talk to him for a while to persuade him. Even though Su Minglang's temperament had changed, he was still as close to Su Mingfeng as in the past. Thinking about it, Su Minglang's enlightenment was late, and he was as round as a meatball when he was young. If he was not ridiculed by his little friends, he would be scolded by Su Yu, and it was always Su Mingfeng who would protect him and plead for Su Minglang in front of Su Yu. Su Minglang did not forget the person who dug the well when he drank water, and when he grew up, he remembered his eldest brother's good treatment to him when he was young. Chapter 859. Su Foran also said, Right. Minglang, let your eldest brother teach you how to write, or let him play with you for a while. Never let him be idle. Su Minglang looked at the husband and wife and said in a deep voice, You all want me to persuade eldest brother not to be upset over older sister Shen's marriage. Su Yu, Su Foreign, Su Ming Lang looked at the lit-up light in the study and said, "Us two brothers need to speak some intimate words. If father and mother have nothing, then leave first. I will not let eldest brother drown himself in the river." After choking for a long while, Su Foreign then said, "Then one has to thank Ming Lang." Su Ming Lang walked towards Su Ming Feng's study and pushed the door open with difficulty. He saw Su Ming Feng sitting in front of the desk with a somewhat anxious and complicated expression. These days, he always had this expression. Su Ming Lang climbed onto a chair that was very close to Su Ming Feng and sat upright before looking at Su Ming Feng. "Eldest brother, if you like, then go and fight for." Su Ming Feng, ? A real man dares to take responsibility for his actions. Su Ming Lang encouraged him with a solemn face. "As a brother, I will definitely support you. Since you like the young lady of Shun family, then go and snatch her over. Anyway, as compared to that Wong that one do not know, eldest brother is much better." Only then did he understand what Su Ming Lang was talking about. Su Ming Feng laughed and shook his head. "What does it have to do with me, who she marries? Then why are you upset?" Su Ming Lang asked puzzledly. "You do not like older sister Shun? Do not listen to mother's nonsense. When did I ever like her? But you still sent people to secretly investigate older sister Shun," Su Ming Lang accused. "If this is not liking, then what is it?" Su Ming Feng shook his head. "I did not do it because I like her, but because—" His tone suddenly paused, and a complicated expression appeared on his face. Su Ming Lang looked at him. "Eldest brother, you are really strange now." "Second younger brother," Su Ming Feng suddenly asked, "do you still remember Xie Jingxing of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage? Older brother Xie?" Su Ming Lang said, "Of course I remember. Is that not eldest brother's best friend?" In the beginning, eldest brother said that older brother Xie had gone to a faraway place and would never return, and told me not to mention older brother Xie in the future. "Eldest brother, has Xie older brother returned to Ding capital?" Su Ming Feng shook his head. "No." He asked, "Do you also feel that he is my best friend?" "Of course." Su Ming Lang said, "Although brother Xie is very fierce, has a bad mouth, and always bullies me, he treats my family very well." Did eldest brother not say before that eldest brother is the youngest in the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, and Xie older brother is eldest brother's eldest brother? Su Ming Feng was silent. Su Ming Lang looked at him curiously. Did eldest brother quarrel with older brother Xie? Su Ming Feng stood up. "Nothing. I will go out for a trip. Ming Lang, you stay here and do not go anywhere." The night of the Ding capital had covered everything. In the princess residence and the Nanbo residence, the undercurrent was like a surging reef, brewing a storm that was enough to destroy everything on the calm water surface. In the residence of Prince Ding, Fu Xiu sat on the high seat. He looked a little haggard, which made his handsome appearance seem a lot less attractive. Some time ago, the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding was burnt to the ground, and Fu Xiu almost smashed everything that could be smashed in the entire bedroom. There was no way to vent his raging anger, and the news that followed made him even more furious. There was no corpse of Pei Lang in the dungeon. Obviously, Pei Lang was rescued by someone, and one could naturally know that the fire was put down by the person who came to save Pei Lang. To dare to behave atrociously in his residence of Prince Ding, and it was so brazen, and the most important thing was to destroy the thing that he valued. Fu Xiu was determined to dig 3 feet into the ground to find out about Pei Lang and the person behind him. He originally thought that it was the Shun family's people, but at the end of the investigation, there was no relationship at all with the Shun family. As he continued to investigate, the clues were cut off, and there was no sign at all. One could imagine the fire in Fu Xiu's heart. Tomorrow was Shun Miao's and Prince Rui's wedding, and after tomorrow, Shun Miao would follow Prince Rui to the Great Liang, and the secret of Prince Rui's body would not be known. Seeing the opportunity disappear in front of him, how could Fu Xiu be willing? Just at this moment, the guard that Fu Xiu sent to investigate the matter came in from outside and bowed to Fu Xiu before saying, "Your Highness, there is movement in the residence of the princess residence and the Nanbo residence. Fu Xiuyi's eyes lit up. How is it? That guard walked 2 steps closer and bent over to whisper a few words in Fu Xiuyi's ear. Forget it. Fu Xiuyi's expression was shocked, and then he revealed a look of joy. Heaven is helping me. Immediately send people to follow both of them, and do not let a single trace of them escape. That guard received the order and left. Fu Xiuyi leaned back on the chair, and a complacent smile slowly appeared on his face. Prince Rui, Princess Residence, the Nanbo, Shenmiao. He said, this prince would like to see what shameful secrets there are between all of you. Chapter 860. The 8th day of the first month of the lunar calendar was a rare, auspicious day. It was good for weddings, funerals, and traveling. When the sky brightened, Shen Miao was woken up by Jing Zhou and Gu Yu to dress her up. Originally, Shen Miao thought that she would not be able to sleep the night before, but who knew that when that day came, she slept exceptionally sweetly. It was as if he had returned to his carefree childhood days. Because she had slept well, her face looked even more radiant, and her complexion was extremely good. Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang brought some exquisite pastries for Shen Miao, and the pastries were made in small sizes. Bai Lu said, young lady should first eat something to fill your stomach. Today's marriage ceremony is complicated, so you cannot starve during the journey. She then picked up a small bowl of porridge and said, this is the winter porridge that Madam personally cooked for Miss this morning. Drink it, and you'll be blessed with good luck. Shen Miao picked up the bowl and slowly drank. He couldn't help but feel a little emotional in his heart. In the previous life, when she married Fu Xiuyi, she cried and quarreled with her family out of spite and forced Shen Xin to agree at the end. However, for this marriage, there were more people watching the show than giving their blessings. At that time, Luo Shuiyin was so angry with her that she fell ill. She barely managed to finish the whole wedding ceremony. How could she have the mood to cook porridge? Unlike now, when everyone in the Fu was happy and worked hard for her with all their heart. Shen Miao herself vaguely felt that this marriage seemed to be extremely good. After eating, Luo Shuiyin came in, followed by a middle-aged woman. This woman didn't look very outstanding, but people couldn't help but stare at her. She was also very particular about her clothes, which made people remember her at first glance. This is Ming Yangzi from the Ding capital, Luo Shuiyin said with a smile. Today she specially came over to be your wedding matron. Shen Miao was slightly surprised. Ming Yangzi was a very famous person in the Ding capital. She came from an official's family, but from a young age, she disregarded her family's opposition and started to do business. Their businesses were rouge, face powder, clothing, and jewelry. There were countless of pampered daughters raised in the Ding capital, and the daughters of officials did not lack money as long as they could satisfy their love for beauty. Moreover, Lady May's clothes, jewelry, rouge, and face powder were the best of the best. Although Lady May was a businesswoman, no one dared to look down on her. However, Lady May's most outstanding skill was putting on makeup and dressing people up. There was once a Wang Ye of Ming Qi who married a consort, and that consort had some friendship with Ming Yangzi. Thus Ming Yangzi became her bridesmaid. Afterwards, there were people who said that the appearance of the Wang Ye's bride was the most beautiful since the founding of Ming Qi. Lady May was the other person's wedding matron because the other person had a friendship with her, but others did not have that luck. Ming Yangzi had never been a matron of honor for anyone in all these years. Shen Nyangzi and said, Ming Nyangzi, and Lady Nyangzi Shen Yangs Shen Shi Shan Shen Su Li Su Shen, and the lady and Shen, one lady, one, as long as princess does not despise this lady's craftsmanship, this lady will be satisfied. These merchants always had a sharp mouth and would speak according to the person and speak according to the ghost. Naturally, Shen Miao did not believe in the words of affinity and thought that it could be that Shen Xin had given this Ming Yangzi a large sum of money. But after thinking about it, Ming Yangzi did not seem to be lacking in money, and even doing business was based on her mood. So why would she care about the benefits of these worldly possessions? Just as she was thinking, Lady May had already come forward and said with a smile, "Princess, this bride's outfit is very complicated. May one have to trouble to change into the wedding dress first, so that this lady can add to your dowry." Luo Shuiyin quickly urged Shun Miao to go over. After changing the clothes, she twisted her face, coiled her hair, changed her jewelry, and put on layers of makeup. Chapter 861. Mei Nyangzi was grooming Shun Miao, as she said with a smile. "This servant has seen a number of young ladies in these years." Officials' young ladies also asked this servant to buy jewelry and cosmetics. This servant have seen all the young ladies in the Ding capital, but there is no one that can compare to the Wang Fei's bearing. She smiled and said to Luo Shuiyin, "Foreign, do not blame this servant for being talkative. The Wang Fei does not look like Foreign. Foreign is candid and frank, while the Wang Fei is graceful and luxurious. Even the nobles in the palace are inferior." Hearing others praising her daughter, Luo Shuiyin was naturally happy, but since the palace was being talked about, Luo Shuiyin was modest. How can it be that good? It is just that Jiao Jiao is calm and has improved a lot compared to her father. Words cannot be said like that. Mei Nyangzi traced Shun Miao's brows and said, "Even though some people have noble status, they do not have that weight in their bones. They only put on airs, and once their clothes are taken off and their jewelry thrown away, they're no different from common people. But some people are different. Even if they have plain clothes and hairpins, they do not have anything and just sit there. They are still high up. I see that the Wang Fei is the latter." She smiled. "Looks like it is a life of great wealth and nobility. But today, Foreign can rest assured that there will definitely not be plain clothes and hairpins. Such a good wedding dress and such good jewelry. If I, Mei Nyangzi, do not do the makeup for the Wang Fei, it would be smashing my own reputation. One must let the Wang Fei be the first in the Ding capital." Shun Miao allowed Mei Nyangzi to fiddle with her as she listened to Mei Nyangzi speak. Thinking that this Mei Nyangzi seemed to know how to read people, she found it interesting and carefully listened to their conversation. This bride's makeup was done for a full 1 hour. Even if it was a light powder, one had to use a small brush made of wool to brush it carefully. The rouge was also the most natural. Eyebrows like a crescent moon, lips like flower petals, but the most beautiful thing was the eyes. Shun Miao's eyes had always been clear and distinct. They had the pureness of a newborn fawn. But today, Mei Nyangzi had gently hooked the ends of her eyes. Her eyes were still as pure as before, but there was a bit more grace for no reason. There was a feeling of being the mother of the world. Luo Shuiyin was startled by this sudden thought. Mei Nyangzi said with a smile, "There's nothing to worry about right now. After a while, the person who will add to the dowry will come. Foreign, stay here and accompany Wang Fei. Nujia will go find some fragrant leaves to make fresh fragrant leaves for Wang Fei to wear." Luo Shuiyin agreed. Shun Miao sat in front of the table as Luo Shuiyin looked at her bewitching daughter in the mirror. She was both happy and reluctant as she held Shun Miao's hands firmly. "Jiao Jiao, today you are going to be married, and Mother has a few words to tell you." Shun Miao said, "Mother, speak. I will listen. When a daughter gets married, the mother has to say a few words. But when I married your father, your maternal grandmother had already passed away. I only had brothers and no sisters. My sisters-in-law were all young, so no one told me these things." Luo Shuiyin sighed. "That's why I figure out these words myself. I don't know if they're correct, but I'll tell you anyway. The way to get along with a husband and wife is to be honest. Your father and I have been together for so many years, and we never had any secrets with each other. If one discover that the other has a secret, one must not be anxious to question. One must wait a while and be more patient. He will tell you." Luo Shuiyin lovingly patted Shun Miao's hands. "Mother knows that you have a steady temperament. This is a good thing, as it is not easy to be affected by external things. But for matters of feelings, it is not something that can be solved with patience. If you like him, you will care about his every move and will involuntarily follow your heart and not be so steady. Be more frank and direct. Do not feel shy and do not be afraid. That is your husband and the person that you will spend your life with." Luo Shuiyin paused before saying, "Jing Xing promised me that after having you, he would not have other concubines. To be honest, I do not trust him. As an imperial family, how can there only be one female in the inner courtyard? It is just that now that things have come to this, one can only take one step at a time. Chapter 862. Shun Miao's eyes hung down and heard Luo Shuiyin speaking again. But our Shun family's daughter will never compromise. If your husband has another woman in his backyard, you can be jealous, you can make a big fuss with him, saying that a virtuous woman is magnanimous. It's all bullshit. It's just an unfair trade that people use to restrict women. If that day ever comes, you don't have to treat him as your husband in your heart. You can't control other people's hearts, but you can control your own. As for the rest, if you want a divorce, father and mother will help you. Shun Miao first looked at Luo Shuiyin in surprise before laughing in her heart. Yes, the Luo family did not have any Tongfang concubines, and the environment that Luo Shuiyin lived in since young made her believe that she would only be a pair of lovers for the rest of her life. If Luo Shuiyin's words were heard by others, it would be shocking, but Shun Miao felt very warm. Luo Shuiyin always considered her feelings and would not let her feel wronged. As for how others felt, what did it have to do with her? Thinking about how Fu Xiuyi's birth mother, Consort Dong Shu, always requested her this and that, requesting her to be virtuous and magnanimous, and even took the initiative to recruit a Sufei for Fu Xiu not long after they got married. It was really a clear contrast. Luo Shuiyin suddenly took out a small booklet from her sleeve and said, "Jiao Jiao this. Keep this well. After the wedding ceremony is over, find some free time to read it." Shun Miao was still somewhat baffled and took it over before asking casually, "What is this?" Luo Shuiyin's face turned red and she stammered, "You need to understand." Seeing that Shun Miao was about to open it, she quickly held Shun Miao's hand and said, "Do not look now. Later. You can read it later when you're alone." Shun Miao nodded her head, and, just as she wanted to ask a few more questions, she saw Luo Shuiyin's unnatural expression and suddenly understood, and her face was burning hot. She had never seen the spring painting before. In the previous lifetime when she got married, the entire Shin residence was in a mess, and she even forgot to bring this booklet with her. Afterwards, on the day of their marriage, Fu Xiu did not consummate the marriage with her, not to mention looking at this. She and Fu Xiuyi's consummation was done in a hurry, and Fu Xiu was extremely perfunctory. Even though Shun Miao had not seen the spring paintings before, she had heard others talking about it later on, and there were also the newlyweds studying the spring paintings, but she had never experienced these before. He didn't expect that after getting married again, the regrets of his previous life would be fulfilled. Just as Luo Shuiyin and Shun Miao were feeling somewhat awkward, footsteps were heard from outside. Luo Tan pulled Feng and Ning and walked in. Seeing that Luo Shuiyin was also present, she said, "Gumu, we are here to send Biao youngest sister's dowry." Luo Shuiyin was just feeling awkward. Seeing that the two of them had helped her out, she let out a sigh of relief. She smiled and said, "Then you guys talk first. I'll go out for a while and come back." After Luo Shuiyin left, Luo Tan circled around Shun Miao and exclaimed, "Biao youngest sister, you are really too beautiful today. She's even better than the fairies." Not bad. Feng and Ning had always been picky and had the temperament to pick bones from eggs. At this moment, she also nodded her head and said, "It is the first one in Ming Qi." Ever since Shun Xiu gave her a cold face, Feng and Ning came less often. But this time when Shun Miao was getting married, even though she was afraid of Shun Xiu, she still plucked up her courage to come. "Heard that it is Mei Nyangzi who made the wedding matron for you." Feng and Ning said, "No wonder she is so good-looking that even I could not recognize her. Biao youngest sister is born to be good-looking." Luo Tan giggled as she took out a small box from her back. "This is my gift to you as a dowry." Shun Miao opened the small box, and it was a thing that looked like a lump of iron, but she did not know what it was. Before Shun Miao could speak, Feng and Ning took the lead and asked, "What is this? It is really too shabby for you to give this to Shun Miao." Chapter 863. What do you know? This thing is called a compass. Luo Tan said, "It is different from those that are used in the military camp, which can only be used in general. This can be used very accurately. It is something that came from the Eastern Sea, and it is said that it is only used in the fleet." Older brother Ling brought 10 back and said that he wanted the craftsman to make more for the army. "It was not easy for me to get one. It is fine if you do not want it." Shen Miao quickly closed the box. "Many thanks." Luo Tan's lips twitched. "I feel that Biao's youngest sister do not lack anything, and Prince Rui also sent such a big betrothal gift, so there's no lack. Sending gold and silver jewelry or whatnot would not be comparable to Prince Rui's, and I would only be asking for humiliation if I were to send it. It is better to send something more practical. Take this compass, as one is unfamiliar with the Great Liang, and if one were to get lost one day, perhaps it would be of great use." Shen Miao smiled. "That is very reasonable. This is more special than gold and silver jewelry." Luo Tan proudly looked at Feng and Ning. "Eldest young lady Feng, what did you send? Take it out for us to take a look and broaden our horizons. If it is some gold and silver jewelry, then forget it, as it is not interesting." Feng and Ning glared at her and said unconvinced, "What is a compass? Our Feng family does not have anything, so why would we send such tacky things?" She opened her box and took out a small bottle from it and said, "There are 3 Yuan Guiyuan pills inside. Do you know about the Yuan Guiyuan pill? It is something that the medical scholars of the previous dynasty made to extend one's life, and there is no market for it." She placed the bottle together with the box into Shen Miao's hands and said in disgust, "Your character is not likable, and there are people chasing after you in Mingqi, much less in the Great Liang. If there is any unexpected mishap, just take 1 Yuan Guiyuan pill, and it will save your life." She then added, "But one think that a scourge will live for 1,000 years, and you will live for a long time." Shen Miao smiled gently. "Many thanks." Feng and Ning's words were awkward, but her intentions were good. Shen Miao smiled at the preciousness of the Yuan Guiyuan pill. Fu Xiao, he once used 1 Yuan Guiyuan pill to bribe an advisor that he wanted to rope in. One pill was worth a talent, and one could see its value. Feng and Ning took out 3 pills at one go. It was really generous. When Feng and Ning heard it, her eyes turned red and said, "After this parting, one do not know if one would be able to meet again in this lifetime. You do not have any friends in Mingqi, and since I know you, naturally one cannot let you lose face. One cannot not take out the dowry that was given." As she spoke, she choked up and said, "It is not that I cannot bear to part with you, but I feel that after giving you such a big gift, if you are not able to add to my dowry for my marriage, it is not worthwhile." Shen Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry and said, "If you were to get married, I will always get someone to send your dowry back and will also write to you from time to time. I will not let you send it for nothing." Feng and Ning then felt slightly better. Shen Miao suddenly thought of something and took out a letter from her sleeves and said to Feng and Ning, "Now, there is a letter. After today's matter, read this letter and then let your eldest brother read it." Luo Tan and Feng and Ning were surprised at the same time. Luo Tan giggled. Could it be that youngest Biao's sister feels sorry for eldest brother Feng and did not agree to eldest brother Feng's marriage proposal, so she specially wrote a letter to express her apologies? Finishing, she shook her head. "But why let Ning read it? Do not bother about this." Shen Miao said, "If there is any trouble in the future, you can come to the Shen mansion to look for my eldest brother. My eldest brother will definitely help." Shen Miao remembered that in the previous lifetime, the Feng family's ending was not good. Feng and Ning married a person with a human face but a beast's heart, and at the end she died at a young age. Now that she was reborn, she and Feng and Ning were after all friends, thus she could only write down all the things that she could remind the Feng family in the letter. If this letter was taken out by Feng and Ning, one feared that Master Feng would think that Feng and Ning was messing around. But it was different when Feng Zixian took it out. Feng Zixian had after all entered officialdom, and Master Feng believed in Feng Zixian's talent, so he would treat this matter seriously. Chapter 864. As for Shen Xiao, since Shen Miao was not in Mingqi, he could only trouble his eldest brother to help take care of the Feng family. When Feng and Ning heard it, Her face turned red, and she mumbled, so fierce. Who needs his help? These words were not heard by Shen Miao. Shen Miao did not have any sisters and had even fewer friends in Mingqi. Most of those who came to add to the dowry were looking at Luo Shuiyan's face, and those young ladies wanted to please Shen Miao. Most of the gifts were gold and silver jewelry. When they saw each other, there were those who were jealous and envious as they all praised Shen Miao's wedding dress and new dowry. Not long after these females who came to add to the dowry finished speaking, the auspicious hour arrived, and the procession of carriages and horses that came to escort the bride had already arrived at the entrance of the Shen mansion. Luo Shuiyan and Mei Nyangzi came in, and Mei Nyangzi covered Shen Miao's head with the veil. Shen Miao's left and right hands were supported by the both of them as she slowly walked out. The entrance of the Shen mansion was exceptionally lively today. The Ding capital streets were empty just to see the Shen family's daughter getting married. The entrance of the Shen mansion was surrounded by 3 layers of people. The commoners were discussing. Today, the extravagance of the 5th young lady of the Shen family's marriage is very big. Look at the carriages and horses outside. It is not something that an ordinary person can use. You see that the sachets that were given as gifts are all silver pieces and not copper coins. One would know that this marriage gift is not ordinary. Another person interrupted. How can the extravagance not be big? Not to mention that the Shen family is already very well off. One did not even look at who 5th young lady is marrying. That is a prince of the Great Liang. One heard that the Great Liang's land is rich and fertile. Initially one did not believe it, but now one have no choice but to believe it. A prince of the Great Liang marrying a wife is even grander than our emperors. Isn't this slapping His Majesty's face? Shoo! These words cannot be spoken carelessly. It is enough to know it in one's heart. The middle-aged female said, one heard that the Great Liang's Prince Ray sent a total of 99 sets of betrothal gifts. One did not know if it is real or fake. Quickly look. It is here. In Ming Qi's wedding ceremony, there was a need to send betrothal gifts. On the day of the marriage, there would be people who would carry the betrothal gifts to the bride's maiden home for everyone to see, and also for the surrounding people to see clearly. Thus, the more generous the betrothal gifts were, the more face the bride and groom would feel. They thought that by giving so many betrothal gifts in front of the people of the world, the bride would feel proud, the groom would also feel proud, and everyone would be happy. Therefore, in order to save face, some people would purposely give an empty box as a betrothal gift on the day of the wedding. But today was not the case. That was because the betrothal gifts were all in boxes that were wide open, allowing people to see the contents clearly. Antiques, paintings, accessories, furniture, jewelry, clothes, silver. There was everything that one could think of, and the boxes were packed tightly without a single drop of water. Almost everyone's eyes turned red, but no one dared to make a move. Even the most arrogant thieves and robbers did not dare to act rashly, because around the manservants who were carrying the boxes, there were all Great Liang soldiers. The soldiers were wearing thick armors, and their treasured swords were unsheathed by their sides. They did not look angry, and their footsteps were orderly, as if as long as there was someone with bad intentions, they would immediately drag that person out and behead him. This kind of prestige and fierceness made others not dare to come close. The crowd spontaneously opened up a path to let those people carrying the betrothal gift pass. Some people were curious and really used their fingers to count one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4. The long queue seemed to have no end, and the sound of people sucking in cold air was heard one after another. Until the last number, someone shouted out, "It is 99 sets. 99 sets of betrothal gifts. 99 sets of betrothal gifts." Chapter 865. In the beginning, when the crown prince married the crown prince's imperial consort, there were only 58 sets, and this was almost more than half. But Prince Rui was only a prince of the Great Liang. So if it was the Great Liang's emperor's wedding, how much extravagant would it be? But one need not care about the Great Liang's emperor. Now that Shen Miao was married, it was already more extravagant than the Ming Qi's emperor. The crowd could not help but burst into exclamations. One could imagine that after today, Shen Miao's grand marriage would become a grand scene that no one in Ming-Chi would be able to surpass. There were also young females in the surrounding crowd, not to mention the daughters of officials that came to add to the dowry. All of their eyes turned red. Which woman didn't look forward to a grand marriage? Women were always somewhat vain. But who would have thought that the stupid Shen Miao of the Shun family, who could not be compared to her own Tang Jia, who was always ridiculed and laughed at, and was disdained by Prince Ding, would be able to marry such a good marriage? One had to know that in the beginning Fu Xiu he was indifferent to Shen Miao, but Shen Miao became braver and was treated as a joke by the entire Ding capital. So it was said that misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. Who could say what would happen in the future? Someone said, did not fifth Shen young lady adore His Highness Prince Ding? One fear that one is rejoicing in one's heart. One know that His Highness Prince Ding had always been simple, and if fifth Shun young lady married to His Highness Prince Ding, one fear that there would not even be 1% of this extravagance. These words were coincidentally heard by Fu Xiu, who was in the crowd. A trace of anger surfaced on his face, but he quickly suppressed it. His simplicity was done for the world to see, but it was for a good reputation. If he was to hear others say this in the past, Fu Xiu, he would only be happy, because it meant that he had succeeded. But today at this place, at this time, Fu Xiu, he was said to be simple, which made Fu Xiu angry. It seemed to be saying that he was far inferior to Prince Rue. The guards that were sent out to investigate yesterday had not returned yet. Fu Xiu knew that the matter had most likely failed. He sent people to search for the whereabouts of his subordinates, but at the same time he had no choice but to participate in Shun Miao's marriage. He also wanted to see how arrogant this great Liang's Prince Rue could be. Unexpectedly, Prince Rue really dared to do so. To actually use such a big extravagance as a comparison, it made the imperial family of Ming-Chi more stingy. If this was not a clear slap to the imperial family's face, what was the most hateful thing was that this could not be said, as Prince Rue was not a person of Ming-Chi and the rules of Ming-Chi could not control him. He then looked at the entrance of a Shen mansion where Shen Miao was being supported by Luo Shuiyin and Mei Nyangzi as they walked out. Shen Miao was standing on the brazier and carefully lifted her feet to avoid burning her skirt. Her movements were careful and slow, as if she was taking this matter very seriously. The surrounding people were amazed at how bright and resplendent Shen Miao's wedding dress was, but Fu Xiu, he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He suddenly felt that this scene was extremely glaring. But why? Towards Shen Miao, Fu Xiu, he had a strange feeling in his heart. Initially, when Shen Miao chased after him, he hated stupid people and wanted to use the Shen family's military power to make use of her. Afterwards, one day, Shen Miao stopped chasing him, and Fu Xiu, he found out that he did not understand Shen Miao at all. Not only was Shen Miao not stupid, she was also very cunning. The Shen family was also very strange. It was obviously a chess piece that was held in one's hands, but one did not know when it started. It had escaped from his hands and even formed a faction on the other side of the Chu-He-Han boundary and confronted him. But that had nothing to do with feelings. Before Fu Xiuyi's great undertaking was completed, he did not have any thoughts to delay the relationship between a man and a woman. But at this moment, Fu Xiu, he actually had an impulse to kick over the brazier because he faintly felt that this scene was not right and seemed to be wrong somewhere. Just as he was unable to suppress this inexplicable thought in his mind, there was a sudden commotion in the crowd. He turned his head to look and saw that the crowd automatically separated to form a small path, and from the end of the path, there was a person in bright clothes riding a horse over. That person pulled the reins, and his bright red robe was as hot as a raging fire as he quickly rode the horse over from afar. His clothes fluttered, and his posture was elegant but passionate, almost burning one's eyes. Everyone was in an uproar. That person was just a step away from Shen Miao when he suddenly pulled the reins, and the horse's hooves suddenly stopped, causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. The young man was sitting high up on the horse, and his silver mask was slightly reddened by the bright red robe. He did not say anything and only leaned over slightly on the horse's back and reached out a hand towards the new bride. He lazily opened his mouth in an irresistible manner. "Come to marry you, Shun Jiao Jiao." Chapter 866. Come to marry you, Shun Jiao Jiao. His tone was casual, but his posture of reaching out from the horse was extremely serious. He was so unrestrained and arrogant, disregarding etiquette, but it made one feel that everything in the world had quieted down. Only this man's appearance was deeply engraved in one's heart, making one unforgettable. The surrounding people quieted down. Shen Miao's head was covered, and she could not see anything. She could only hear the voice coming from the front. She instinctively raised her head, and in the next moment, she felt her hand being held up by someone, and something was placed on her fingertips. The cool and soft touch made her somewhat at a loss. The surrounding people sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Every generation of the prince of the first rank would have their own thumb ring. The thumb ring was not just a decoration, but more importantly, a symbol of status. One could use this thumb ring to command his subordinates at will. Of course, everyone would know the royal relatives and nobles wherever they went, so there was no need to use this thumb ring. But one had never seen a thumb ring that symbolized the status of a prince of the first rank being given to others. This was not just a thumb ring that was given out. This meant that Prince Rue had given Shen Miao the power to mobilize his subordinates at will. With Shen Miao having this thumb ring, when everyone looked at her, it was no different from looking at Prince Rue. This was surrendering one's power to others, but he was giving it to a female. One had seen those who dote on their wife, but one had never seen such doting. The surrounding young ladies were extremely envious and jealous. Even though this Prince Rue was wearing a mask, his charm was infinite. His status was noble, and he was also generous. The only thing they could comfort themselves was that Prince Rue was so outstanding, and naturally, there would be many women around him. Shen Miao was also not a heavenly beauty and would definitely be quickly disliked by Prince Rue, who knew that the groom would directly use facts to slap their faces. In this world, it was the first time they saw someone pampering his wife so much. Why was it that the fifth young lady of the Shun family had such a good life? One did not know what good fortune she had cultivated in her past life. However, in this world, misfortune and fortune depended on each other, and misfortune lurked within. Everyone would never have thought of the things that Shen Miao had experienced in her past life. After Prince Rue put the thumb ring on Shen Miao's hand, his thin lips hooked up, and he slightly leaned over, and a kiss was imprinted on the back of Shen Miao's hand. There was a tingling sensation on the back of her hand, and Shen Miao naturally guessed what it was and could not help but blush. It was fortunate that her head was covered and others could not see her embarrassment. Prince Rue straightened up, and Mei Nyangzi hurriedly sang with a smile. Enter the betrothal gifts. Lift the dowry. After carrying the dowry, as the mother, she had to personally feed the bride some sesame dumplings. The dumplings were small, and there were peanuts, lotus seeds, and sesame seeds mixed inside, implying to give birth to a noble child early. Luo Shuiyin scooped it up with a small spoon, and Shen Miao slightly lifted a corner of the lid and swallowed the sesame balls that Luo Shuiyin fed her. Luo Shuiyin's eyes were a little moist. Jiao Jiao, after you get married, don't let yourself down. Shen Miao's heart was also moved and said, Mother, save it. Shun Xian turned her back and quietly wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. He was a grown man and also a general who had led countless of soldiers, so it was not proper for him to cry in front of others. However, his heart was very sad. Towards Shen Miao, Shen Xian always felt that he owed her a lot, especially after the conversation with Xie Jingxing that day. He then knew that he had always thought that they raised Shen Miao in a greenhouse, but did not know that there were more snakes, worms, rats, and ants in the greenhouse. In those years that no one discovered, she had gradually grown up. Before there was time to make up for it, before there was time to do anything, Shen Miao was about to get married. From a crying baby to a babbling little girl, and now to a slender and elegant bride, Shen Xian was filled with emotions. Shen Qiu walked over. The bride's brother was responsible for carrying the bride onto the sedan. Chapter 867. Shun Miao laid on Shun Xiu's back, and Shun Xiu walked exceptionally slowly as he spoke softly. Younger sister, you are too thin. If you were to marry to the great Liang, when I see you again, as long as you're thinner than today, I will look for Prince Rui to settle accounts. Shen Miao, quickly give birth to a niece for me. A nephew is also fine. Shun Xiu's voice was naive and did not have the bravery of the battlefield. He said, I will come and see you. Shun Miao buried her head in Shun Xiu's neck and acted like a spoiled child to him. Must. Prince Rui, who was on horseback, saw this scene, and his brows twitched. After Shun Xiu carried Shun Miao onto the sedan and the curtain was lowered, Main Yangzi started to sing. The most grand event in the world is the joy of a wedding. The monarch did not hear of the saints, a mouthful of food, a ladle of drink, in a shabby alley. One cannot bear the worries, and one does not change one's happiness. Lang Jun is like this. Beautiful. The fifth lady of the Shun family. At the beginning of Nuwa, she refined 10,000 stones to mend the heavens, cultivated on the surface, and melted into the inside. She was really a gentle and graceful lady. Born to be a citizen, there are rules for everything. Long Juan's appearance was dignified and his mannerisms were like a wild goose pagoda. Even though he was involved in the crowd, it did not change. The fifth lady of the Shun family was from the Ming Qi's Ding capital. She was gentle and virtuous, completely different from the vulgar, bewitching and elegant. Her appearance was dignified and her mannerisms were reserved. Even Shizi's appearance could not compare. Today the marriage of Qin and Jin, tying the hair to become husband and wife, loving and inseparable. 1 Yang first moves, 2 surnames harmony, 3 abundance for beauties, 5 generations of prosperity, the phoenix divination. 6 rites completed, 7 virtuous gathered, 8 gathered, 9 harmonized, 10 perfect and flawless, envy the Luan and harmony. A pair of lovers leave a shadow. Matchless countries scholars tie the knot. Lift the sedan, the wedding is a success. Main Yangzi's voice was bright and cheerful, and the lyrics were pleasant to listen to. When she finished singing, everyone applauded and cheered. The servants who were preparing outside suddenly threw out the copper coins that were pasted with gold foil. The crowd swarmed and said auspicious words as they snatched the money and sweets at the same time. It was bustling with activity. Shun Miao sat in the bridal sedan chair. Although she could not see what was happening outside, she could clearly hear the surrounding movements. It was bustling, which made her heart feel perturbed. She comforted herself that it was not her first time getting on the bridal sedan, so what was there to be nervous about? However, when she did it again, her hands still couldn't stop trembling. Lowering her head, she saw the white jade thumb ring on her fingertip. It flickered with a bright and clean color, and she couldn't help but reach out to touch it. The bearers outside began to lift the bridal sedan. The bearers that Xie Jingxing found were naturally good, and the sedan chair was lifted very steadily and did not sway at all. Prince Rui sat on a tall horse and walked at the front. There were large red silk flowers hanging on the horse's body, making him look very dignified. His posture was lazy but elegant, and everywhere he went, the commoners cheered and laughed. This was actually very valuable, because Prince Rui was not a person of Ming Qi, and the relationship between the great Liang and Ming Qi was very subtle. But even so, the commoners seemed to respect Prince Rui a lot. Perhaps it was because the other party was generous, or perhaps it was because some people felt comfortable just by looking at him. At the end of the day, Prince Rui's marriage was considered to be a joyous occasion for all the commoners. Behind Prince Rui was the bridal sedan that the bearers were carrying, and on both sides, the carriages and horses of the residents of Prince Rui kept scattering money. One heard that Prince Rui's marriage entourage would circle around the entire Ding capital, so scattering money along the way was really too generous. Behind them was the Shun family's wedding entourage. The Shun family was not as arrogant as Prince Rui and handled the boxes well. Everyone counted, and there was a total of 50 sets, which was exactly half of Prince Rui's betrothal gifts. Even though this dowry could not be compared to Prince Rue's betrothal gifts, it was definitely not a small amount. One had to know that when the crown prince married, the crown prince's consort's dowry was only 42 sets, and the Shun family had 8 more sets. The most important thing was that the Shun family was not a wealthy merchant family. Even though they were well off, they were definitely not overflowing with wealth. Chapter 868. This kind of attitude was enough to show Shun Miao's position in Shun Xian and wife's heart. At the back of the crowd, Luo Shuiyin, who was riding along with the wedding procession, secretly turned her head and said to Shun Xian, "Is this really good?" Shun Xian said, "Since he dares to send, we dare to accept. Moreover, he sent 99 sets, and our residents cannot afford so much dowry. If it is less, others would laugh at us." Luo Shuiyin did not speak anymore. Out of the 50 sets of Shun Miao's dowry, 20 sets were from Prince Rue. On that day when Prince Rue came over to send the dowry, a piece of paper fell out from the dowry box. Luo Shuiyin saw clearly that it was the list of Shun Miao's dowry. Prince Rue also knew that his betrothal gifts were too shocking and the Shun family would definitely not be able to afford a matching dowry, so he simply settled the dowry himself. Even though there were only 20 sets, these 20 sets were firmly filled to the brim. In other words, Prince Rue had given the Shun family 119 sets of dowry. It was because of this that Shun Xiu's impression of Prince Rue became better. After all, the other party was not stingy with spending money on Shun Miao's marriage and was a very straightforward person. The streets were filled with gongs and drums beating in joy. Fu Xiu was mixed in the crowd, but did not continue to follow. He only felt that this scene was very eye-catching and his face was cold as he turned his back to the sedan chair and left. Naturally, Emperor Wenhui was the same as him. Emperor Wenhui had long heard from his subordinates that Prince Rue's marriage was grand and was even more glorious than him, the emperor. This was like slapping his face. The more glorious Prince Rue was, the more the Ming Qi's imperial family looked like a cold cicada. Of course, the thing that made Emperor Wenhui the most unhappy was not this, but that he was originally unwilling to this marriage. If it was not for Prince Rue using the few cities at the border to threaten him, he would not have made this move. He was obviously not willing for Shun Miao's marriage, but he still had to write an imperial edict to Prince Rue. The Shin family's good chess piece was wasted just like that. As long as Emperor Wenhui mentioned that Prince Rue was getting married today, the scene of Prince Rue threatening him in the imperial study to bestow marriage would appear in his mind. His chest would be stuffy, and he would not take the initiative to find trouble for himself. He then let the eunuchs in the palace receive the wedding gifts that Prince Rue sent over and closed the palace doors tightly. He then returned to Yangxian Hall to lie down and did not allow anyone to disturb him. This marriage had to be done in Ming Qi, and the bridal sedan had to be carried around the Ding capital. But marriage was a matter of both parties. Prince Rue's family was in the Great Liang, and originally after the bridal sedan bypassed the city gates, it was to leave the city, but Prince Rue insisted on completing all the formalities in the Ding capital. Thus, the ritual of greeting one's parents was held at the altar in the Ding capital. The altar in the Ding capital was a place that the emperor would use when he appointed the empress. Needless to say, this was an additional reward that Prince Rue requested from Emperor Wenhui. No matter how unwilling Emperor Wenhui was, he could only agree. On the altar, Mei Nyangzi carefully helped Shun Miao down from the bridal sedan, and Luo Shuiyin and Shun Xian, who followed along, sat at the other end of the altar. Bow to heaven and earth. Bow to one's parents and bow to one another as husband and wife. This was Ming Qi, so naturally Luo Shuiyin and Shun Xian accepted Shun Miao's bow, but Prince Rue's imperial father and Empress mother had already passed away for many years. Both of them could only sprinkle wine on the ground as a form of worship. Finally, the husband and wife bowed to one another, and the ceremony was completed. Since the matter had reached this point, it was announced that from now onwards, Shun Miao was Prince Rue's consort. Marry a chicken and follow the chicken. Marry a dog and follow the dog. She was, after all, a great Liang person. In the midst of everyone's cheers and laughter, far away from the crowd, Ji Yushu was talking to the people beside him. Really did not expect that third older brother would really marry Shen Young Lady. He sighed. 2 years ago, I could see that third older brother treated fifth Shen Young Lady differently, but did not expect that she would become my sister-in-law. But is also quite good. I initially thought that with third older brother's temper, ordinary young ladies would not be able to handle it, but fifth Shen Young Lady is different. With her around, I am assured. Chapter 869. The person standing opposite him was also wearing the clothes of the servants of Prince Rui's residence. His face was sloppy and ordinary, but it was Pei Lang who had disguised himself. Pei Lang finally agreed to follow Shen Miao to the Great Liang. Just like what Shen Miao said, he had already completely offended Fu Xiao Yi, and if he continued to stay in Mingqi, not only would he not be able to gain any benefits, he might even implicate Lu Ying. Fu Xiao Yi had many eyes and ears, and perhaps one day he would be able to find out his details. It would be better to bring Lu Ying back to the Great Liang with him and take drastic measures. Even if Fu Xiao Yi really discovered something, he would also be helpless. On one hand, it was for Lu Ying's consideration, and on the other hand, it was because Pei Lang himself wanted to do so. As for knowing that Prince Rui's real body was Xie Jingxing, that was a matter of a few days ago. He was recuperating in the residence of Prince Rui, and when he went out to the courtyard at night, he happened to see Prince Rui's back facing him. When he went up to greet, he saw the true face of Prince Rui. Prince Rui did not wear a mask. Pei Lang knew that if a person like Prince Rui wanted to conceal something, he would definitely not let his guard down. Obviously, he had intentionally accidentally let Pei Lang see his face. Perhaps he was using his identity to declare something. Now Pei Lang understood why Prince Rui would do that. Pei Lang kept persuading Shen Miao to think about the marriage with Prince Rui. Towards a prince of the Great Liang, Shen Miao's understanding of the other party was still too shallow. But when Prince Rui became Xie Jingxing, many things were different. Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao knew each other and seemed to have some friendship. Since Shen Miao already knew that Xie Jingxing's identity was a prince of the Great Liang, their relationship was definitely not ordinary. He raised his eyes and looked at the couple on the altar who were dressed in wedding clothes. The man was talented and the woman was beautiful. They were a perfect match. An inexplicable sour feeling welled up in his heart. For a person like Shen Miao, even though she always schemed against people's hearts and made use of everything around her, she was an extremely stubborn person. No one could change what they had decided on. For example, if she hated Fu Xiao Yi, she could use all means, even if it meant risking her life to draw a line with Fu Xiao Yi. Actually, if she wasn't willing, no one could force her. His gaze then fell onto Prince Rui. To create such a big scene and force the imperial family of Mingqi to retreat step by step, who would believe that the Great Liang would always be content in a corner. She was the golden phoenix that soared to the ninth heaven, and he was the true dragon that could call the wind and summon the rain. Ji Yushu glanced at him and patted his shoulder before speaking sympathetically. A fair and graceful lady is a gentleman's desire. Gentleman, Pei must not be too sad. When we return to the Great Liang, with Gentleman Pei's grace, there will be many young ladies who adore you. At that time, I will let young Lady Xiao Yao introduce your sisters to you. Even though Ji Yushu still remembered that he was locked up in the tower prison for a period of time because of Pei Lang, but seeing Pei Lang this sorrowful today, at the end he did not hit him when he was down. Pei Lang was embarrassed to be seen, but he stubbornly looked at the couple, refusing to move his eyes away. Ji Yushu sighed softly in his heart. Gao Yang also followed them back to the Great Liang today, but he was the imperial physician of Mingqi in name and had some status and things to pack. If Emperor Wenhui knew that Gao Yang brought all the expensive medicinal herbs back to the Great Liang, one did not know what kind of wonderful expression he would have. When all these were done, and the complicated and cumbersome etiquette was meticulously completed, it was already afternoon. It was time to leave the city. Shen Miao was married to Prince Ding. This was called a distant marriage. From the Ming Qi's Ding capital city gates, from then on the mountains and rivers would grow, one would be a great Liang's person. Chapter 870. Everyone in the Shun family naturally wanted to follow along. Luo Tan did not go and said that Shun Miao was unwilling to bring her along to the Great Liang. Her heart was sullen, and today she followed them to the Ding capital during the day, but she was not willing to see that kind of parting scene again. Everyone could not do anything to her and could only give up. In the princess residence in the Ding capital, Princess Rong Xian was sitting restlessly in the room. Your Princess Highness, Prince Rui's sedan chair is almost at the city gates. The person who came to report said. Princess Rong Xian waved her hands irritably and let the servant leave. She fell onto the chair and bit her lips uneasily. In that letter, Xie Jingxing's real identity was exposed, and she had to send a letter to the Imperial Palace's Emperor Wen Hui's hands. This was her responsibility as a princess of Ming Qi. Since ancient times, it was difficult to be loyal and righteous at the same time. One could only choose between family affection and one's country. Even though she and Xie Jingxing had an indelible relationship that was closer than mother and son, but the distance between the two countries made this relationship not pure. If Xie Jingxing died because of this, Princess Rong Xian would be sad, but if she did not do anything and let Xie Jingxing bring this secret back to the Great Liang, Princess Rong Xian would regret it. Therefore, at the last moment, she chose to personally cut off her attachment and feelings for him. Princess Rong Xian had an absolute understanding of her own imperial older brother as to what would happen after Xie Jingxing's identity was exposed. Perhaps because of the Great Liang's national strength, they would not do anything that would make Xie Jingxing die, but to destroy a person's reputation and let 10,000 people curse was possible. To carry such a stigma, even if he returned to the Great Liang, Xie Jingxing's days would definitely not be good. Princess Rong Xian chose to use the letter to explain everything and did not personally see Emperor Wen Hui, as if she felt that this would be able to ignore her own betrayal. As if the one who betrayed Xie Jingxing was not herself. But why did Emperor Wen Hui did not take any action until now? Now that the carriages and horses were about to reach the city gates, Shen Miao would get off the sedan chair and board the horse carriage to leave the Ding capital with Xie Jingxing and head to the Great Liang. This kind of procrastination was not Imperial older brother's character. There were some doubts in her heart, but there was more uneasiness. But Princess Rong Xian could not take the initiative to go out and see what was going on. She was ultimately unable to face Xie Jingxing, or it should be said that she did not have the face. Go and check again. She called another subordinate over. Rui Wangfei's marriage sedan had already reached the city gates, and Mei Nyangzi had completed the matters that the matron of honor wanted to do. Jingzhe and Guyu helped Shun Miao down from the marriage sedan. Shun Xian and Luo Shuiyin carefully exhorted Shen Miao. The Great Liang and Ming Qi are different. At that end, remember to always take care of yourself. If you're cold, take care of yourself. Write to them from time to time. If you are wronged, you must tell them. Shun Xian turned his head and said a few words to Xie Jingxing. They were well aware of each other's identity, and since Xie Jingxing was honest, Shun Xian's view of him had changed. He instructed Xie Jingxing to not let Shun Miao be bullied in the Great Liang no matter what. Xie Jingxing naturally agreed. Shun Xiu fiercely threatened that if the next time he saw that Shun Miao was thin or haggard, he would definitely bring the Shun family army to flatten the residence of Prince Rui. Prince Rui only snorted at this. If it was not for Luo Shuiyin stopping him, one feared that Shun Xiu would have fought with Xie Jingxing on the spot. The time had arrived, and Shun Miao spoke a few more words to Shun Xian and Luo Shuiyin. Now that she was about to leave the Ding capital, there were many matters in Ming Qi that she wanted to manage. Thus, she could only exhort a few words. Chapter 871. Luo Shuiyin wiped her tears and said, Jiao Jiao, you must write back. The curtain of the horse carriage was put down, and the long convoy of guards moved forward one by one, carrying the heavy dowry as they moved forward in an imposing manner. And at the front, Xie Jingxing was sitting upright on the horse, but the horse kept following the carriage, and from time to time he would talk to Shun Miao through the curtain of the carriage. It made Jing Zhiguyu and the few maids giggle. The journey was naturally very far, and from Mingqi to the Great Liang, it would take a few months of journey. In the past lifetime, she had also left the Ding capital city gates and traveled to the Qin country. But the carriage that she sat in after the country was not as comfortable as it was now. At that time, there were very few servants and palace maids, not to mention people who would protect her and accompany her to talk. Faintly, there was some joy in Shen Miao's heart. Until the evening, it was time to find a place to rest outside. Just as she was thinking about it, the convoy suddenly stopped. Shen Miao's heart tightened. There were often bandits on the roads outside the city. Could it be that they had met with thieves blocking the road? But after thinking about it, Xie Jingxing's subordinates were highly skilled, and there were many of them. One feared that they would be able to defeat the thieves blocking the road. Even though she was not afraid, her heart was still suspicious, so she simply put down the veil and lifted the curtain of the carriage. Jing Zhiguyu exclaimed as Shun Miao had already jumped off the carriage. One saw Xie Jingxing stopping his horse in front, and in the middle of the road, there was a person wearing a black bamboo hat leading the horse and blocking the front. He said, "Hey, as a brother, do you owe me a bag of money?" That was Su Mingfeng's voice. Most likely he was trying to deceive others, so he wore a cloak so that others could not see his face clearly. He followed from afar, or perhaps he had arrived here in advance and was far enough that he was not afraid of others hearing the conversation here. Shen Miao was slightly startled, but Xie Jingxing had already flipped down the horse and walked in front of Su Mingfeng. Su Mingfeng took out a letter from his bosom and smashed it on Xie Jingxing's chest. "My congratulatory gift." He then whispered, "The letter that was sent out from the princess residence was suppressed by me." "I know." Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up, "but many thanks." Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment before his voice became angry. "You know, by the way, you have eyes and ears everywhere. I'm afraid you've already hidden your men everywhere. Every movement in the princess mansion can't escape your eyes. Even if I didn't suppress this letter yesterday, you still have a way to take it away." Xie Jingxing declined to comment. "You." Su Mingfeng grabbed Xie Jingxing's collar and pretended to beat him up. Jingzhe and Guyu jumped in shock, but Tai Yi and the rest did not step forward to stop them. Su Mingfeng suddenly let go and said angrily, "Scoundrel." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "I'm very happy that you are willing to send me off." Su Mingfeng was silent for a moment before saying, "This is the last time. This is the last time I'm here to send you off." He raised his head. "Loyalty and righteousness can't be both, but this time I'll still choose loyalty. After this, you and I are no longer brothers." He said, "I know what you're planning, so you don't have to persuade me or make me stay. Both of us will eventually reach the point where we will meet on the battlefield. When we meet again, we will be enemies and no longer have the feelings of the past." He said word by word seriously, "But now, you are still my Su Mingfeng's brother. There are some things in the world that made one helpless. Fate would always turn the closest person into the most estranged person. If one wanted to obtain something, one would have to give up some things. Those that were retained would always be the most precious." Shen Miao seemed to be able to see through these two young men in front of her. Many years ago, when they were still friends, chatting and laughing, strolling from the streets of the Ding capital to the end of the alley, and then teasing the teacher together. Su Mingfeng slowly clenched his fist and placed it in front of Xie Jingxing. This was an action that both of them would often do when they were young. The males in the Ding capital would often use this action as a testimony of their brotherhood. When Su Mingfeng was young, he felt that this action was very cool. Thus he let Xie Jingxing do it. Afterwards, as he grew older, he felt that this action was stupid and mushy, so he did not do it often. Xie Jingxing looked at him and suddenly smiled. He shook his head and also extended his fist to bump. Su Mingfeng looked up and laughed, delightful. He suddenly flipped up the horse that he came from and said to Xie Jingxing, "After today, both of us will no longer be brothers. But now that the sun has not set and the moon has risen, you and I are still best friends." He clamped the horse's stomach and the horse neighed. Su Mingfeng turned the horse around and left. "Today I will congratulate you once again. From today onwards, there will be no need to worry about food and clothing and a house full of children and grandchildren. A house full of distinguished friends and longevity is boundless." That gentle and always smiling young man's voice was bright and clear, and the ending sound gradually dissipated in the afterglow of the setting sun, and one could only see a blurry back view. Xie Jingxing's eyes were smiling, but his brows gradually became cold. He once again mounted the horse and whipped. He shouted, "Set off." Chapter 872. It had been more than a month since Shen Miao left the Ding capital. One did not know where Prince Rui's wedding procession had gone to, as one would not be able to catch up. In this 1 month, the Ding capital's discussions about the 10 Li of Red wedding did not stop. The storyteller in the restaurant talked about the grand occasion of Prince Rui's consort marriage, and it was still filled with guests. The storyteller shook his head as he spoke, and the guests felt the same when they heard it. After all, not everyone could afford to spend such a grand sum of money. After Shen Miao turned into Prince Rui's consort and followed Prince Rui to marry to the Great Liang, 2 things happened in the Ding capital. The first thing was that the Fengxian pawn shop that had been open for many years in the Ding capital suddenly closed its doors. In one night, everyone from the shopkeeper to the assistants were all gone, and the few shops and buildings of the Fengxian pawn shop were sold to others at low prices. It was heard that the Fengxian pawn shop's shopkeeper's family had an urgent matter and needed money, so he suddenly left. This inevitably made one sigh. Even though the Fengxian pawn shop's business was very precious, and those who came to pawn or buy things were all wealthy and ordinary people would not be able to afford it. But after all they had been here for so many years, and to suddenly leave, one was not used to it. It was also after the change of ownership that the commoners then discovered that after so many years, no one had seen what the Fengxian pawn shop shopkeeper looked like. The second thing was that the formidable great General Shun Xian was promoted after his own daughter married. He was promoted to become a military judge. He was in charge of the entire imperial court's imperial army. On the surface, it was a promotion, but in fact it was not so. First of all, the military judge only had the power to transfer, but not the power to train the troops. It was just an empty position, and even though the salary was more generous than the general, who would use salary to live. Moreover, Shen Xian had always trained the Shun family's army, and the Shun family's army was his personal soldiers. Suddenly, it was changed to the imperial army, and the imperial army was Emperor Wen Hui's people. Could Shen Xian really mobilize them? Most likely not. Thus, those with eyes and brains would know that Emperor Wen Hui was guarding against Shen Xian. Shen Miao married to the Great Liang, and Shen Xian had the temperament of doting on his daughter. Now that the relationship between the Great Liang and the Ming Qi was so subtle, if Shen Xian were to favor his daughter and secretly rely on the Great Liang, it would be bad if he did something bad to the Ming Qi. Even though Shen Xian had been a great general in Ming Qi for so many years, and his loyalty could be proven by the heaven and earth, but since ancient times the emperor was suspicious. Who asked him to be a subject and others to be the monarch? He could only blame his bad luck. The people in court could see it clearly, but the common people felt injustice for Shen Xian. This imperial family was really too heartless. It was obviously a marriage bestowed by Emperor Wen Hui, but now, because of this marriage, Shen Xian had to bear the responsibility for no reason, which really made one angry. Emperor Wen Hui did not care about these matters, as he was currently trying his best to please the Qin country's emperor. He did not know why, but the Great Liang made him feel uneasy, as if it was a potential danger. At least he had to join hands with the Qin country, otherwise he would not be able to have peace every day. The residence of Prince Ding was also not very happy recently. Fu Xiu said with a gloomy expression, "It has been a month, and there is still no news of Pei Lang's whereabouts." Could it be that he can fly? If he is alive, I want to see him. If he is dead, I want to see his corpse. If he is still not found, then all of you do not need to come back." The spies below complied, and Fu Xiu waved his hands in annoyance. "Get lost." The few of them retreated in fear. He sat down on the chair and pressed his forehead with an unhappy expression. The people who rescued Pei Lang burned down his dungeon. Previously he did not feel it, but these days it was inconvenient for Fu Xiu to do anything. There were many people in the dungeon who had other uses for him, but they were all burned cleanly by those people. One could imagine the anger in Fu Xiu's heart. The thing that made him most angry was that there was no trace of Pei Lang's whereabouts at all. Fu Xiu thought that he had good eyes and ears in the Ding capital, but to be unable to find a person's whereabouts, it could only mean that the other party's methods were better than his. It was not a happy matter to have such an opponent. Chapter 873. Fu Xiu had always suspected that the person behind Pei Lang was from the Shun family, but after investigating, the Shun family's suspicions could be completely eliminated. If it was not the Shun family, then who could it be? "Your Highness, there is no news of Pei Lang in or out of the Ding capital. Could it be that Pei Lang had already left the city?" The advisor reminded Fu Xiu. "Impossible." Fu Xiu said, "I have people in the city's garrison, and there are portraits of all the people who leave the city these days. It is impossible for Pei Lang to pass through unscathed." The advisor frowned and didn't know what to say. "However, there are people who don't need portraits." Fu Xiu suddenly spoke. "On the day when Prince Rui married the imperial consort and left the city, no one stopped the guards of the residence of Prince Rui from leaving the city." The advisor's eyes lit up. Could it be that Pei Lang was mixed in with that group of Prince Rui's people and followed them out? Fu Xiu sneered. "The residence of Prince Rui is heavily guarded. How can one sneak in? Moreover, Pei Lang and Prince Rui do not have any friendship, so how to mix?" He suddenly stopped. Friendship? At this time, Fu Xiu suddenly remembered something. All along, he had seen Pei Lang as a member of the Shun family, and the person in charge of the Shun family was Shun Xian. However, he had neglected a point. Actually, for many things, the things that hindered his great cause, intentionally or unintentionally, were all related to Shen Miao. If Shun family and Shun Miao were viewed separately, and Pei Lang was not loyal to Shun family but Shen Miao, everything would make sense. Pei Lang was Shun Miao's person, and Shun Miao was now Rui Wangfei. Before this, she seemed to have some unclear relationship with Prince Rui. On account of Shun Miao's feelings, Prince Rui might help to save Pei Lang once. Then Pei Lang and Prince Rui would be related. Fu Xiu suddenly stood up. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. In the entire Ding capital, the only person who had the ability to burn the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding without anyone knowing and still be able to escape unscathed, and not even leave behind any traces, seemed to be this mysterious Prince Rui. Damn! Fu Xiu slammed the table. He had always wanted to know what secret Prince Rui was hiding. But the night before Shun Miao's marriage, the spies that he sent out did not return, and it seemed that they were discovered and silenced. Otherwise, he would be able to know what Prince Rui's deeply hidden secret was. Just as he was feeling vexed, he saw a guard rushing in from outside. This person was Fu Xiu's confidant. He quickly stepped forward and took out a letter from his bosom and said, "A letter was sent out from the princess residence and was sent to the imperial palace. This subordinate has intercepted this letter and made a copy. Please take a look, Your Highness." Fu Xiu's heart moved and quickly took the letter. On the matter of Prince Rui, Princess Rong Xian's performance was also very abnormal. Fu Xiu had the intention to inquire about it, but ever since Prince Rui and Shun Miao left the capital, no matter if it was Princess Rong Xian or the residents of Ping Nanbo, they did not do anything special. Every day, they still did what they should do, making him unable to start. Princess Rong Xian had been a widow for many years and was not close to Emperor Wenhui. It was rare for her to enter the palace all year round, not to mention taking the initiative to write a letter over. It was fortunate that Princess Rong Xin had been away from the palace for so many years. Thus Fu Xiu was able to easily make a copy of her letter. Fu Xiu took out the letter and could not wait to start reading. At first, his expression was only a little anxious, but as time went on, his expression changed. It was as if he was extremely shocked and angry, and with the extreme anger, his facial features were somewhat distorted. When the aides at the side saw him like this, they did not even dare to breathe loudly. After a moment, Fu Xiu suddenly supported the table with one hand and fiercely overturned the teapot on the table. Chapter 874. The tea that was poured spilled all over the floor, and the aides and confidants were shocked. Fu Xiu was after all a person who did not show his emotions on his face. Even though he would occasionally be angry, he would not show it like this. It seemed that this was the first time one saw him lose his composure. Fu Xiu only spat out a good word before ruthlessly smashing the letter on the aide's face. The aide hurriedly took it over and was stunned when he read it. In the letter, Princess Rong Xin mentioned a matter, and it was about Prince Rui. Everyone knew that in the past because Princess Rong Xin and Princess Yuqing had a good relationship. Xie Jingxing, who was born to Princess Yuqing, was also taken care of. Even for Xie Jingxing, she did not hesitate to fall out with the residents of the Marquis of Lineage. Afterwards, when Xie Jingxing died in the battlefield 2 years ago, Princess Rong Xin was very upset. Princess Rong Xin naturally understood Xie Jingxing, and in Jifeng's heart, Princess Rong Xin had raised a sensational matter. Princess Rong Xin felt that Prince Rui of the Great Liang and Xie Jingxing were somewhat similar. Without any evidence, to suddenly say that Prince Rui of the Great Liang was similar to a person who had died for 2 years, the first reaction would definitely be that it was absurd. But Fu Xiu had been paying attention to the princess residence for such a long time and had long discovered that Princess Rong Xin was unusual. Needless to say, Fu Xiu was almost certain that what Princess Rong Xin said was the truth. There was no need to doubt that the real identity of Prince Rui from the Great Liang was Xie Jingxing. The aide's hands almost could not hold the letter steadily. Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui? What did that represent? It represented that Xie Jingxing was playing with the entire Ming Qi in the palm of his hands. If Xie Jingxing was still the heir of the residents of the Marquis of Lin and had private dealings with the Great Liang, then one feared that the Great Liang knew everything that happened in Ming Qi. Your Highness, Your Highness. The aide looked at Fu Xiu, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Fu Xiu indeed slowly calmed down, but upon closer inspection, his hands seemed to be trembling. Since Xie Jingxing did not die, then the matter of the northern Zhang Xie family army must have been exposed. He slowly said, the Xie family army had mixed in with the imperial family people, and Xie Ding's confidant had given Xie Jingxing a fatal stab. Since Xie Jingxing did not die, it was assumed that he had investigated clearly. This also meant that everything that they did to the residents of the Marquis of Lin was seen by Xie Jingxing. So for this tribute of Ming Qi, what was Xie Jingxing doing here? Was it revenge? Fu Xiu supported himself on the table. The advisor was also at a loss. After a pause, he said, since the princess has already sent this letter to the palace, His Majesty will take action once he knows. It's useless. Fu Xiu interrupted his words. Xie Jingxing had already left the Ding capital for more than a month. Imperial Father is afraid of the Great Liang's influence and dare not go against him openly. If Xie Jingxing hadn't left, we could have used the people of the world to stir up a conflict. Unfortunately, it's too late now. The advisor also sighed and said, why didn't the princess take out this letter earlier? If I had acted earlier, I wouldn't be as helpless as I am now. Fu Xiu glanced at him and seemed to be unhappy with the stupidity of his subordinate. The advisor was flustered by his stare and only heard Fu Xiu saying, stupid. The princess must have thought of a way to inform Imperial Father before. Perhaps the wedding ceremony had already been done the night before. But at the end it was the same as my men and was stopped by Xie Jingxing. Even though he tried his best to suppress his anger, his eyes could not hide the resentment. Xie Jingxing did not hide it too deeply. Then the Shun family. The advisor asked. Continue to watch. Fu Xiu sneered. I want to see if the Shun family knows nothing about Xie Jingxing's identity or if they have been playing dumb for so many years. At this moment, everyone in the Shun mansion did not know that such a thing had happened in the residence of Prince Ding. Chapter 875. Ever since Shun Xian was promoted to the position of military commander, because he did not need to personally lead the troops, he did not go to the Ministry of War every day. Xin Xiu was still in his old position, being a small leader with Luo Ling in the garrison army. But the days were much more relaxed than before. Luo, Shui Yin, and Shun Xian discussed, why not after a few more days, we will bring up with His Majesty to return to the Shao Chun city. Luo, Shui Yin sighed. At least in the Shao Chun city, one would not waste one's time like this. Shun Xian shook his head. The Emperor kept us in the Ding capital to guard against the Shun family's movements, and it is impossible to let us return to the Shao Chun city. To stay in the Ding capital and become a chess piece to restrain Jiao Jiao. It would be easier to do things in the future. Luo Shui Yin vaguely felt that Shun Xian's words were somewhat strange and seemed to be hinting at something. Just as she was about to ask, she heard Shun Xian sighing. Moreover, there is no news from Tanner. If one were to really return, I would not dare to see father-in-law or brother-in-law. That is also true. Upon mentioning this matter, Luo Shui Yin felt a headache. I have already sent people to send a message to Jiao Jiao and the rest. It is just that Jingxing's subordinates are fast, and one do not know if they would be able to catch up in time. It would take time for them to come and go, and now there is no news. My heart is not at ease. On the day of Shun Miao's wedding gift, Luo Tan did not come to send it off. She said that it was because Shun Miao was not willing to bring her to the Great Liang to sulk, and also did not want to witness the parting scene. Luo Tan was somewhat willful in the Shun family, and everyone was helpless. On that day, when Shun Miao left the city, it was already evening when she returned. Luo Tan's maid said that Luo Tan had already fallen asleep, and Luo Shuiyin thought that Luo Tan was unhappy, so she did not disturb her. It was not that Luo Shuiyin did not care about her niece, but even though everyone knew that Luo Tan was bold, they did not expect that Luo Tan would be bold to this extent. In the beginning, Luo Tan quietly followed Shun Xian and the rest to the Ding capital. That was because they were all from the same family, and in any case, they were all in Mingqi. This time it was from Mingqi to the Great Liang, a completely foreign country, and the people accompanying were all Prince Rui's people. Luo Tan did not know them, and most likely did not dare to. Who would have thought that this young miss of a Luo family would also have a fiery temper, and even dared to travel thousands of miles by herself? Until the afternoon of the second day, Luo Tan still refused to take a step out of the house with the excuse that she was not feeling well. Luo Shuiyin finally realized that something was wrong. When she went to look for someone, she saw Luo Tan's maidservant trembling as she held a letter and knelt down to beg for mercy. Well, riding alone for 1,000 miles, Luo Tan confidently left a letter and followed Biao Mei's footsteps to the Great Liang that was full of food and clothes and crowded with people in the marketplace. Luo Shuiyin jumped in shock and quickly sent people to chase. But Shun Miao's people had already left for a day, and Prince Rui's team were not ordinary characters. Their footsteps were very fast, and one did not know when they would be able to catch up. There was no news for a month, and Shun Xian and Luo Shuiyin were still worried about this matter. I only hope that when the letter reaches Jingxing's hands, Jingxing will send some reliable people to send Tanner back. Luo Shuiyin said. How would Luo Tan know about these things in the Ding capital? Even if she knew, she would only pretend that she did not hear it, because there were more important things than these things. It was already evening time, and the carriages would need to rest at this time. Naturally, Xin Miao had already been arranged to stay in the houses along the way, but Luo Tan was miserable. She had mixed in with a group of martial artists in the residence of Prince Rue and rushed over. She had lived together with the Luo family since young and did not have the arrogance of a female and was even more presentable when she dressed up as a male, so no one discovered her identity for a moment. But every night was the time when she was in pain. The martial artists in the carriage were not like Xin Miao, a Wang Fei who could stay in her own room, but more than 10 men would sleep in a room together. A few of them would sleep on the bed, a few of them would sleep on the floor, and a few of them would even put the tables and stools together to sleep. Chapter 876. Luo Tan was not squeamish. Whether it was a bed, a table, a stool, or a mattress on the floor, she could endure all of it. The only thing she could not endure was sleeping with a dozen strange men. At night, there were sounds of snoring, sleep-talking, and all kinds of strange smells. From time to time, a man would put his leg on her body. It was really more uncomfortable than killing Luo Tan. If Luo Liantai and Madame knew about this, they would probably break her legs. And what scared Luo Tan the most was bathing. No matter how rough she usually was, it was impossible for her to not bathe for more than 10 days like these men. Moreover, she could not tolerate jumping into a lake to bathe with all the men every time they saw it. There were a few times when she was almost pushed down together with the others. Luo Tan was so scared that she almost screamed out loud. In the end, she had an idea and said that she had an ugly scar on her body. She didn't want to be seen in front of everyone. Although the martial artists thought that she was troublesome, they didn't force her anymore. There happened to be a hot spring behind the farmhouse, and the water in the spring looked very clear. The warriors had gone into the water in the evening, but she had not. At this time, the moon had risen, and no one saw it. Luo Tan hugged her clothes and sneaked out. She walked a long way in the dark to the lakeside. She looked around and saw that it was already late at night. Everyone was fast asleep. Even if someone woke up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, they wouldn't come here. Luo Tan was relieved. She quickly took off her clothes and went into the water wearing only a doo-doo. The hot spring water was warm and comfortable. It had been a long time since Luo Tan had such a blissful bath. She usually sneaked out at night when no one was around to burn firewood and take a bath. It was very troublesome, but now she felt extremely happy. As he looked at the moon in the sky, he thought, "It's already been more than a month, and it seems that Luo Shuiyin hasn't caught up yet. I'm afraid I really can't catch up." Even if he managed to catch up, it seemed impossible to return. Since it was like this, should he make it clear to Xin Miao? Her cousin had a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. She would not really do anything to her. In this way, she would be able to sleep in Shen Miao's room and would not have to bathe behind someone else's back. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard footsteps coming from afar. Luo Tan jumped in fright, afraid that someone was coming. She didn't know what to do, but she didn't dare to stay any longer. The footsteps were already very close, so she had no choice but to grab the clothes by the side of the rock and submerge herself into the water. Luo Tan knew how to swim, but it was not easy to bury her head in the water. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the hot spring, but did not leave. Luo Tan gradually found it extremely difficult to breathe. She really wanted to raise her head and float to the surface, but she was only wearing a doo-doo. Even if she floated to the surface, she was afraid that her innocence would be ruined. No matter how carefree she was, at this moment, Luo Tan had to take care of her own sanity. She was as stubborn as the people of the Luo family. When that person stopped by the hot spring and refused to leave, Luo Tan desperately hid in the water and refused to come out. Just that along with the passing of time, Luo Tan's eyes were already a little blurry. Her mind was also a little muddled. She even felt that she was going to be buried here, following which she felt sorrowful. Thinking that in order to maintain her clarity, she actually had to sacrifice herself here. It was a pity that she had not been to Great Liang. Then he heard someone speaking vaguely above him. "You're pretty good at swimming. Are you planning to suffocate yourself to death?" Luo Tan's heart moved, and she could no longer hold back her breath. So she suddenly broke out of the water. But she still had some rationality and only let her head out of the water, but her body was still hidden under the hot spring. Fortunately, the steam from the hot spring made one unable to see her body clearly, else Luo Tin would really die of shame. Tisk, that person said, one thought that you would be able to hold on longer. Chapter 877. Luo Tan glared at that person, but when she saw the other person's appearance, she was suddenly startled and blankly said, Dr. Gao. That young man who was squatting on the lake with a lantern in his hand and looking at her with a smile was none other than Gao Yang. In such a cold day, he still had the mood to gently wave the folding fan that never left his side. His lazy posture made one feel sullen. Why are you here? Luo Tan could not help but ask. Gao Yang smiled and did not speak. Luo Tan muttered in her heart. The other party was the imperial physician of Ming Qi, but now he appeared in a place so far away from the Ding capital. Could it be that he had gone out to such a remote place? She asked, Dr. Gao, you even accept the business of such a remote patient? Is the amount of money given to you by the imperial court very little? You actually work so hard. In her words, there was actually undisguised sympathy. Gao Yang choked on Luo Tan's words and said after a long while, It is not what you think. Luo Tan looked at him. Then why are you here? Gao Yang stared at her calmly. Then why are you here? Me? Luo Tan confidently said, I am youngest Biao sister's dowry Biao older sister to accompany her to the Great Liang. Gao Yang almost laughed out. Dowry Biao older sister, to think that she could think of it. He said, Oh, I met a person a few days ago. He seemed to have come out from the Shin Mansion and was holding a letter to give to Consort Rue, but one did not know where Consort Rue was and asked me for directions. Luo Tan was surprised. You let him go see my youngest Biao sister? Gao Yang shrugged his shoulders. No. I saw that he was travel-worn and very tired, so I left him here with me and wait for him to rest enough before going. Luo Tan first gave a sigh of relief before becoming nervous. Dr. Gao, you must not let this person see Consort. Why? He is a bad person. Luo Tan said, He wants to frame me. Never. Gao Yang smiled. Frame you? Frame you from the Shin Mansion to the carriage of the residence of Prince Rue and follow him to the Great Liang? Luo Tan, after a few words, Luo Tan stared at Gao Yang speechlessly. What to do? Gao Yang was somewhat distressed. If you were to send this person to Prince Rue, then she would be sent back to the Ding capital. Luo Tan blurted out, No. It wasn't easy for her to follow them for so long, sleeping with those martial artists for a month, but all her efforts were wasted at this time. She refused to accept it. She looked at Gao Yang with determination. What should I say so that you would keep it a secret for me? Gao Yang said, That's right. If you had said that earlier, I wouldn't have wasted my time here with you. Gao Yang said, Tan. Why did she feel that Gao Yang had been waiting for her to say this? What do you want me to do? Luo Tan asked. Gao Yang glanced at her and said, Come out first. Only then did Luo Tan remember that she was still wearing a dudu while talking to Gao Yang. Although she couldn't see, she still felt embarrassed. Her cheeks immediately turned red. Fortunately, it was dark and Gao Yang didn't notice it. She said, My clothes are all wet. I can't go out. Help me find some clothes. Just now, in order to hide from the people who came, she was afraid that her identity would be discovered, so she could only hug her clothes and dive into the water. Now that her clothes were wet, she couldn't go out in wet clothes. Gao Yang thought for a moment, then started to take off his clothes. Luo Tan was shocked. What are you trying to do? Gao Yang took off his clothes and handed them to her slowly. I'm just giving you clothes to wear. What are you thinking about? Turn around. Luo Tan felt that this Dr. Gao was especially annoying today. She was being played around by him. Gao Yang turned around and said, There's nothing worth seeing. Luo Tan didn't hear this. She just came out of the water and hid behind a rock. She quickly put on Gao Yang's clothes. Gao Yang's clothes were a little big for her, but she couldn't care less at the moment. After dressing, Luo Tan said to Gao Yang, You can turn around now. Only then did Gao Yang turn around with a smile. Tell me, what's your condition? Luo Tan asked. How have you been sleeping these past few days? Gao Yang asked a question. I slept with everyone. Luo Tan answered matter-of-factly. You will sleep in my room from now on. Why? Luo Tan was angry. Men and women should not touch each other. Are you a woman? Gao Yang laughed. Yes, you're not a man. Luo Tan immediately retorted. Gao Yang said faintly, the person who delivered the letter is still in my room. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Luo Tan quickly said, I'm going to sleep now. Gao Yang waved his fan and walked away. Luo Tan followed behind. Why did she feel that Gao Yang seemed to be a different person compared to the Dr. Gao, who was easy to bully? It was as if he had revealed his true nature. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.